Lakini siku hizi mimi naambia Uhuru mwenyewe anaweza kuambia nyinyi, nimewaambia wewe mambo mara mengi, mambo yanaenda mbaya hapa, chukueni hatua hapa, lakini kwa sababu ya mgawanyiko ndani ya serikali Jubilee hawachukui hatua. Siku hizi kama mtu amepatikana ama ameshikwa kwa mambo ya ufisadi, anatetewa na wabunge wa Jubilee. Unaangalia kwa mfano hii mambo ya Kimarere na Aror, makamu wa rais wenyewe wanasema ati bilioni 7 peke yake ndio ilipotea. Na bilioni 7 sio pesa ya kununua mandazi, ni pesa mingi zaidi.
Kama uko na shida na performance ya serikali ya Jubilee, tafuta Uhuru Kenyatta kwa simu ama umtembelee ofisini, umwambie kwamba iko shida na performance ya serikali ya Jubilee. Wacha kiburi na madharau ya kuja kumzungumzia rais kwa rali na kwa njia ambayo ni ya madharau.
All right, Deputy President William Ruto and Raila Odinga there, of course, they're speaking from different sides of view. And I want to begin this with you, Honorable Gladys Boss. Of course, this conversation has been going on for long. And what do you make of the statement that Raila Odinga has just made, that he has tried several times to speak to the president that things are going wrong, but because of the division within the party, then things are not able to move as they should?
I think it's very surprising what he has said, because after the handshake, he has been carrying on like a co-president and has actually been behaving like he's part of the executive, not as an opposition leader at all. I remember seeing pictures, particularly the one when he was in Taita Taveta. On the stage, there was a picture of the president, his picture, and that of the governor. And, you know, I've never seen the deputy president's picture displayed together with that of the head of state. In every state function, it's just that one of the head of state. So he's been carrying on like that and participating and behaving like he's part of the government. So right now, he's beginning to say that I have tried to correct things in government. He hasn't. In fact, he used to do that when he was playing his opposition chief role. In fact, if you remember, what made Raila Odinga likable in the past, he called out the Eurobond, he called out SGR, he called out, I think, NYS. He was always at the forefront of keeping the government in check. But after the handshake, he went silent. This is the first time I'm hearing him saying he has been telling the government. But we haven't heard him say it publicly. So I think it's a bit dishonest.
Right.
I think what he has realized that being in the handshake has not given him any political momentum and has not helped him at all. So I think what he's trying to do is backtrack.
How was it to help him?
He had assumed that he was going to use the handshake and BBI platform to campaign for himself for 2022. And then he kept on, even he was part of the attacks that other people are starting campaigns too early. I think now he's realized, I made a mistake, I should have hit the road running, and I should have been continued with my role as an opposition leader and as an alternative to the current government. So now he's trying to disassociate himself from Uhuru Kenyatta at the moment.
Honorable Ali Sohome, what do you make of this? Because you've been so critical of President Kenyatta. I believe it was starting, was it the first day of the year 2020 or the last day of 2019 when you said that he was the single most biggest existential threat to the country's democracy and economy. And now...
And he still is.
Honorable Ali Sohome, now Raila Odinga is saying what he is. What do you make of this?
I said that on 2nd of January 2020. Although I had started that conversation, but on a, you know, in the interest of democracy and in defense of democracy, on 29th of December 2019, during the burial of Charles Rubia. And then 3 days after, on 2nd of January 2020, I did a press statement while in Malindi, and I outlined my concerns, and I think since then, of course, we have seen the economy decline. some of the things we were discussing earlier regarding the debt borrowing, the debt, the crippling debt, the huge borrowing, unexplained projects, transparency, and because as Wanjiru had said earlier, you need these projects, yes, but projects must also be able to make money for the country, you know, to produce results. And of course, the other problem is the exaggeration of the costing of the national government projects and also the county projects. But let's come to this political debt or the accusation by the, I don't know, they are not NASA anymore. It is ODM. These particular statements can be associated to ODM, although I have seen Mudavadi and Kalonzo have also joined in the rhetoric. But I think it would be unfortunate for Raila Odinga, who has been very close and supportive of the president so far since the handshake, to now come out and attack the president suddenly, looking, you know, from an observer, like it has just come by, you know, suddenly, by surprise, that, look, the Jubilee government is failing or is not delivering. If it was said by the deputy president, for example, it would be obviously very serious because he's also within the government. But you can say we are having challenges and own that. I think if the president came out and said, these are our challenges, we would understand. But now you have been working within the government and even in parliament. These people have been telling us openly that they are in government. We are the opposition. Some of us who have been chunked out so that they are not seen to be working with the government or supporting the government. Because, you know, when you are doing committee work at the chair level, actually you are directly working and facilitating the government with its proposals so that when the work comes before the committee, you are able to guide the committee, you know, in tandem with what the government needs to do or in terms of implementation. So I think Raila should not be the one saying this. He absconded his work. The whole of the handshake thing is a scam, if you ask me. And Raila has absconded his constitutional...
Why do you call it a scam? It's given birth to the BBI process.
Because nobody was complaining about the constitution. It's only two people who came together and said there is a problem with the constitution. I mean, losing an election cannot be a national problem because it can be a party problem. The party that loses, it can be its problem, but it's really not a national problem. And you see, Raila has made his loss a national problem, a Jubilee problem, but I don't want to blame him alone. Jubilee welcomed him. So it is okay for Jubilee to be criticized, but it is not okay for Raila to say what he's saying because he has been working as if he is the government.
Let's listen to some more voices around this topic, and then we can bring on board Wanjiru Gikonyo and Senator Kasanga.
Wewe unasema Uhuru Kenyatta ni ndugu yako. Mbona unakuja kumuanika barabarani? Eti serikali ya Jubilee haijafanya hii, serikali ya Jubilee haijafanya ile. Si wewe utafute rais ofisini uende umwambie hiyo?
Si walisema siwezi kuwafukuza kwa ODM, nikaenda nikawafukuza kwa Jubilee. Sasa mbona sasa wanalia ati mimi nimewafukuza? Nimewafukuza wapi? Hiyo ni porojo. Kama wameshindwa na kazi ndani ya chama chao, wamezozana wenyewe kwa wenyewe. Sasa wasiingize ODM ya mambo ya ndani ya Jubilee. Hiyo ni shauri yao.
Hiyo ni shauri yao. So
it is true.
We
welcomed him.
let's bring in Wanjiru. So when you look at this, of course, you've heard the comments from one Gladys Boss and Alice Wahome. Of course, you know their side of political persuasion, and I use persuasion for what it is in English. But what do you make of these contestations that you now hear at this time, 18 months to the next election?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. It's unfortunate because obviously, as we've been discussing, there are very critical issues facing the country. And we've seen Parliament as a whole unable to exercise its mandate. And much as we sympathize with what Honorable Sholay and Wahome are saying, that they were persuaded, whether it's by, whether they say not by brown envelope, but by the facts they were given. We know there is a parliamentary budget office that is set to advise Parliament. We also know that as civil society we engage and we advise, but the public participation process, the use of evidence from the parliamentary budget office has not, hasn't been brought on board. What we are seeing is that legislators are operating on political parameters that are around personalities and possibly around other incentives that are not visible. So, there is still a disconnect. And at the end of the day, what we are sure is that citizen interests are not being heard. Public interest is not being upheld by these very legislators. And I would say that Uhuru Kenyatta's style of politics is a very authoritarian politics, actually, that doesn't fit in well with our constitution. And that's why the BBI project is there, designed to weaken the checks and balances on the presidency. So if you look at Uhuru Kenyatta's style of politics, and you call it Jubilee style, they have weakened key institutions, starting with Parliament. And I think what I'd like to hear from Honorable Sholei and Honorable Wahome is an honest assessment on why has Parliament been weakened? Why hasn't it been able to oversight the failures of this legislature, beyond the rhetoric that they are giving us now? We've also seen a systematic weakening of the judiciary, with Parliament in tow, slashing budgets of the judiciary and issuing all kinds of threats on political grounds. We've also seen the weakening of other key institutions through political appointments of people who are either ineffective or not even worthy of holding such positions. So the key crime against the people of Kenya has been the weakening of institutions. So under the Jubilee administration, the Uhuru Ruto axis, and then also now the Raila Odinga, whether it's the NASA or ODM axis, all have combined together to reverse the democratic gains, checks and balances on power. And that's the issue. And that is why we are seeing this toxic politics, because right now it's a competition for raw power. We are not hearing some realities being put in place, such as we don't have a properly constituted IEBC. We do not have the legal checks in terms of caps on political campaign financing, transparency around that. So we are seeing really a political elite obsessed with power. And the amount of time they spend doing their oversight job is possibly 10–20%. And whatever good they do is then quickly overturned by where they want to pledge their political allegiance. So it's a dire situation. We are seeing the rhetoric becoming more toxic. We are seeing an electoral commission that is not properly constituted. We are seeing we are heading on the line to similar to 2007. The conditions on the ground are very similar to those that led to the post-electoral violence, and all our politicians can think about is defending their political interests, looking at 2022. So we are losing our country, and squarely to blame are our political leaders, and they need to tell us, are they going to get out of personality politics and look at the country? Give us this year and start your campaigns next year. But unfortunately, that may not happen. We may be hurtling down a cliff in full view of our very dire destination.
Right. You said that you wish that they could give us this year, then start the politics next year. It might be a bit late because the politics began a long time ago. And you speak about politics of personality versus issues. Senator Kasanga, you have the opportunity to sit at the house that protects the interest of the counties or devolution. There are a few things that were said about your statement. I don't know whether you would want to reply to them. But also, when you look at the politics that you're witnessing in the country, we'll shortly listen to some different leaders on what they've been saying. But where we headed 18 months to the election, yet there's certain concerns that are yet to be resolved that would be very critical when it comes to that election?
Yeah, Sam, let me just start by reacting to the statements of my sisters in studio, that I have actually nothing to apologize for. And in fact, you know, the interesting thing, and I need to let them know, that people are speaking now. Other members of parliament are speaking, and they're speaking openly in platforms, either because they've been unhappy with how things are running, whether you're in opposition or you're in government, or you were in government and now you're in opposition. All that said and done, because people have been so dissatisfied, and because there's a lot of probably bile going out and around, members of parliament are beginning to speak. So these conversations are happening on other platforms. I have absolutely nothing to apologize for. It has been said severally that this persuasion has weakened parliament significantly. And when you hear the civil society speaking about it, then there's something there we really need to consider and take in as Kenyans, that there is definitely...
So it's a rumor.
Because parliament
Not
has
a fact.
a lot of power. Parliament has a lot of power. We have seen in other jurisdictions, parliament actually rendering a government, you know, completely, you shut down government because you're not satisfied with the issues of accountability. We should have seen that happen. By the time the CS was coming for another round of, you know, extension of the debt ceiling, you should have demanded first to see that which you have borrowed, how have you spent it? We needed to have seen that level of parliament engaging to that point. But that said and done, Sam, so that we can move on to the other conversations. You know, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who's the handshake partner, does not sit in cabinet, does not present cabinet papers. He's not part of government. He's always, you know, played his opposition away from government. This perception that is being drawn that he's part of government is not true. He can speak about, you know, the governance of Jubilee from wherever he is, whether as handshake partner or otherwise, because the role of the handshake has been, you know, clearly stated time and again from Kenyans. And, you know, we like to forget
But Senator Kasanga, because you and I live in this country, it's the first time that you're hearing Raila Odinga starting to criticize the government. All along he's been criticizing the deputy, but now he's speaking about the failures of the administration on the promises that they gave. So what has changed and what are we witnessing? Because we know there will be an election on 9th of August 2022.
No, Sam, I don't think it is sincere to say that he has never spoken against or rather criticized a government. I think Raila has been very consistent when it comes to criticizing the government and criticizing several things and saying what needs to be done here and there. At least from where I sit, it has been a consistent conversation.
Sam, can
and
give
yes,
an example.
He might have been.
Just a moment.
No, let me finish.
Just carry on, Senator.
Yes. Yeah, he might have been, of course, the BBI and, you know, the constitutional amendments and the road to recovery from where we were in 2017, 2018, yes, may have probably taken the center stage for him, but I think he has been consistent when it comes to the issue of, you talking about government and how government is doing this and that. I think he has been very consistent in fairness. I cannot say that something has changed, at least from where I sit, Sam.
Okay, all right. Let's listen to some leaders that have been speaking about this.
Sio ati kama means ya kupeleka Raila katika ikulu, hapana. Wacha Raila kando, waangalie BBI kama inaleta manufaa kwa Kenya. Kwa mfano hata kurekebisha zile viti ambayo zilikuwa ile gerrymandering ilikuwa inafanyika, imeweka katika BBI.
Msizunguke mambo ya baba. Wale waliojenga baba wako hapa. Na William Samoei Arap Ruto. Na tuko pande moja. Raundi hii hakuna kubahatisha. The Hustler Nation narrative has killed their regional, their ethnic, their personality-based politics. Na sisi hatuna vita vyovyote na tajiri yoyote. Mimi nikiendesha bodaboda yangu, mimi ni tajiri. Nikiendesha mkokoteni, mimi ni tajiri. Wheelbarrow ndio tutatumia kupeleka Hustler katika State House. Mnataka BBI ama wheelbarrow? BBI ama wheelbarrow?
So, Honorable Alice Wahome, so this conversation has been going on for so long, and earlier on we were talking about the politics of message, but when you listen to your fellow members of parliament talking about that, when I read my boda, mimi ni tajiri, munataka wheelbarrow or BBI, what are we dealing with? Because again, Kenyans have serious concerns, whether it comes to employment or rather unemployment, whether it comes to the economy not doing as well as it should, the COVID-19 concerns, the effects are still being felt. How does all this talk help us as we prepare for 2022 to really elect the people that are going to help us resolve these issues?
You see, Sam, as I speak, of course, I'm a Jubilee Member of Parliament. And there is some share of responsibility that this government must take in terms of delivering on the promises that the Jubilee made to the country. And we have been consistent saying we are losing focus. So when you see my colleagues being very, persistent on where we are going, is because there were things that we had said we will do as a government. And of course, the government relies on the party that has put it in power to be able to come up with legislative supporting mechanisms. Now, before the handshake, we were having a very good conversation regarding the Big Four agenda. And in the Big Four agenda, there were obviously outlined projects and focus in terms of where the country is going, what is needed to do with the universal access to universal healthcare. That was one of the biggest projects that the country would have achieved. Today, access to health is still such a challenge. People are dying, they cannot access healthcare. There is no medication in our hospital, there is no medicine in our hospital. We don't have enough personnel. The national government has not even rolled out standards and quality for the counties, because the standards and quality is a county, is a national government, whatever. So then there was, of course, the housing. It had many housing projects. It had many houses that were to be done. I think we were talking about 500,000 houses. And those schemes, you can imagine the kind of employment it would have done to the youth, to artisans, to literally everybody, and of course housing the population and accessing housing for the ordinary Kenyan.
And therefore one wonders...
then that conversation suddenly seems to have come to a stop. I think the country cannot hear it. We can't quite pick it from the ground, because the conversation that has been now going on for the last 3 years is handshake and referendum. Right now we are on referendum. After the handshake, the handshake, then the BBI and the referendum. Those are 3 subjects that have captured the country. And Raila Odinga and our president are right in the middle, and they say they are the drivers of that conversation. I think we need to now therefore say, where is the conversation on the economic drive, on the projects that are driving the economy? Where are we on working on the health sector? You've seen how we have lost a lot of money through the COVID. We are still having challenges with the teachers, the education sector. So I would say that when we now talk about the Hurubaro, I think people are being simplistic. When we are discussing about a Hasra, we are again being dismissive and abusive to the ordinary Kenyan. If you go in this country all over, every market, you will be met by that single item called Hurubaro. There could be many other items, but this is what apparently is taking center stage, because some youth in Nairobi requested the deputy president to actually give them Hurubaro.
Right.
And I think there will be people asking maybe for Foko Jembes, there will be women asking for water tanks, there will be women asking, and this means that they can be able to have money in their pocket through tea production, through coffee production, through maize production, through sugar production. They may not need that Hurubaro from Adona or from Therefore, the conversation...
Let me extend it to Honorable Boss here.
I just wanted to conclude to say the narrative that people are now trying to pick, that we are having a conversation between the rich and the poor, we are having a conversation about how to spur the economy, how to also discuss about the ordinary Kenyan and the livelihood and what they are doing on a daily basis to try and put some food on the table, some money on the table.
Honorable Boss, Alice Wahome has done a good job to really put on the table the issues that currently the country is facing with, and they've forgotten, or quote unquote, the Big Four agenda that has not performed as well as it was expected. But then again, in as much as all these programs are not supposed to now be the magic bullet to the solution to all our problems, how do you ensure that whatever message you're giving to the electorate is going to translate to actionable issues that will bring sustainable growth of the economy?
Yes, I think the message we are sending to the public and to Wananchi is that come 2022, let us elect somebody who will focus on putting policies that will empower individuals in the country and be able to go back to look at the dignity of work. Because the biggest challenge we have at the moment is unemployment in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And the economy is doing badly. So we said we have failed to focus on the economy as promised for the past 3 years because we've been focusing on the handshake. But now we are saying we want to have that conversation again and say only focus on the things that will empower Kenyans and the dignity of work. And people should be able to earn a living wage. That is what we are talking about. That one should be able to prosper from humble beginnings to greatness.
But if you're to accuse Raila Odinga of distracting, or is it detracting the government from focusing on its Big Four agenda, how how can you assure Kenyans that even after 2022, politics will not come in the way of delivering on the promises?
I think the only way to make sure that we deliver on our promises is stay away from Raila Odinga. You remember what Raila Odinga did in 1997 to Ford. He went to Ford, he disrupted Ford. In 2002, he went to Kanu, he disrupted Kanu. In 2005, he disrupted NAC, I think at the time of Kibaki, after saying Kibaki Tosha. In 2013, he messed up code. In 2018, he did exactly the same thing to NASA. Now he's on his own.
Now Jubilee.
And then he has come to Jubilee. So actually, if you want to have progress in this country, stay away from Raila Odinga. Because Raila Odinga will cause mayhem wherever he goes. He is not interested in the progress of this country.
Wanjiru Gikonyo, is the country's problem in Raila Odinga? And how do we, as citizens, ensure that whatever promises are given, we demand practical policies that will translate to the reforms that we would want to see in the socio-economic sectors?
Thank you, Sam. In fact, you framed the question very well because you're going back to the citizens. And if you don't mind, I'll end with my view on the Raila issue. With regard to this wheelbarrow narrative, it's a very cynical, very, very cynical strategy to capitalize on a genuine gap that I agree with Honorable Boss and with Honorable Wahome, a gap that the Jubilee administration ignored and has failed, because 82% of Kenyans make their living in the informal trade. However, for them to find that this is being used as a point of mobilization by actors really who have had no interest in this sector, it is very cynical. And it could also be dangerous, because the narrative is you know, this country needs a revolution, by the way, and the Constitution sought to be that revolution, a peaceful revolution, a revolution against political, economic elitism. You know, so that is needed. But then to take that and instrumentalize it towards political office is extremely dangerous, because once you let that genie out of the bottle, there is no saying what will happen. So it's you know, for me, I find it's extremely cynical to exploit this sector in that way. But we must remember it is because of the failure of public policies. I'd like also to comment on another gap that has been there, and one of the biggest failures of the Jubilee administration, apart from, you know, the type of leadership, I think has been philosophical. This idea that of the Big Four being a top-down approach. For instance, UHC, very good initiative. But when you look critically at UHC, the gaps then become at implementation, because there is this notion that the national government will come and deliver healthcare. And you're saying constitutionally healthcare is with the counties. So the top-down big infrastructure narrative conflicts with that bottom-up participatory governance, which is what we've seen in Makueni, where the money really goes down and the structures are built on the ground. So the big failure of the Jubilee administration, and perhaps as civil society, we didn't make this argument well enough, because we've gone to court, but we have been unable to persuade our political leaders that stop a minute and look at what the Constitution sought to do. It sought to move power into the hands of the people, not power from the president to the governor, and fighting has been between the president and the governor, the MP and the senators. Where are the people? So our politicians have failed to embrace the spirit of the Constitution, have failed to bring the citizen on board. And that is why you're seeing the failures in the Jubilee projects, because a lot of them are white elephants. The last point, or the second last point, is the idea of the wheelbarrow is what you call assistentialist. It means that because we have high unemployment, you give youth wheelbarrows and create jobs. Those are not jobs. That is not sustainable. Those are handouts. Youth have been setting up their associations, trying to get funds to enable them do business, maybe become suppliers, collect solid waste for the counties and such. They are blocked because of corruption. So we do not want to buy into this notion that you create jobs by giving wheelbarrows. No. You create jobs by opening up the value chains. You make the credit processes, the youth funds, you make them accountable. And it's back to this issue of transparency, public participation. Local governance structures need to be built. So, you know, this is very bankrupt economic policy. It's very steeped in perpetuating a political elite that gives handouts to the public, and we need to reject that. Lastly, with Raila now coming out to criticize the president, we must acknowledge that Raila, for whatever personal motivation has been very instrumental as an opposition politician in this country. And his voice has been very much missed when he got co-opted into Jubilee. Now, the fact that he's jumping out shows that he can see this is a sinking ship, and he's jumping out for survival. But at the end of the day, he's become part of the problem. And we must begin looking at what are the new political voices. You know, the Tebuda Kibwanas putting their hats in the ring, the Wycliffe Oparanyas and such. And we need new political leadership. We need new political thinking. And my hope is that these alternative political voices can come together and marshal some of their resources to hold those who are more entrenched in the national politics to account, and give Kenyans a real option. Thank you.
All right, Senator Kasanga, so many things have been said, including that the handshake was a scam, that Raila Odinga is the problem, that the hustlers sort of politics is what is going to rescue this country. But again, 18 months to the election, we have so many challenges. IBC, like Wanjiru Gikonyo referred there, is not yet fixed. We have a pending BBI process that may end up at a referendum. What should we be focusing on at a time that all these challenges and work to do is our life?
Sam, thank you again. And I think this is probably the last opportunity to speak. So I will also give a bit of my parting shot. But I just want to react a little bit to some of the comments that everyone on the panel has said. And I'll say the Big Four agenda, which we are probably not hearing about so much because there's so much politicking happen. I want to just say that there would have been no Big Four agenda if there was no handshake to start with. So in a way, Kenyans, we owe it to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga for having agreed to go into a handshake at a time when we remember, and you know the problem with us Kenyans, we like to forget very easily. If you remember the state of the nation, at the time before the handshake, there was nothing going on. There was no economy to speak on. Half the country had gone completely into, a standstill. So the Right Honorable, to having agreed to put down whatever ambitions he had at that point in time and go into a handshake and give the country the stability it needed to roll out the Big Four agenda is something that we cannot, understate. And we have to thank him for that. Fine. Indeed, that it has taken over everything. I still stand by what I said before, that as far as I'm concerned, he does not sit in cabinet. He's not running the government. It may be an illusion that he is because, he's working closely with the president when it comes to rolling out, the agenda of the handshake. But that does not stop him from speaking against the government and the failures of the government. But we have to agree that he has played a critical role in opposition, just like Wanjiru has said. And in fact, our wish would have been if we had, we had him in parliament, for instance, as the opposition leader. Then you can see a very robust parliament happening, and you would have probably a different outcome than what we are seeing here today. When it comes to the issue of the wheelbarrow narrative, again, this one is a very dangerous path to walk. Wanjiru has put it very well, actually, when she says, a section of our members, the ones who are disgruntled by the handshake in the first place, having felt that they have been probably bumped out from the space that they were in, now have taken into this narrative. And it looks increasingly that it is for their own benefit as opposed to the people who they're using to peddle this narrative. And it's a dangerous place to go. And I really wish they can find it in themselves to rethink the strategy. And I know it's politics. Everyone wants, all the politicians want to be at that table finally when, that national resource is being discussed. As you have seen, the 1.9 trillion, is where your focus should see why all this conversation is happening. So for me, this is an issue we need to be very careful about. It is the wrong strategy. We cannot talk about wheelbarrows in the 21st century. We should be talking about laptops and, and tablets as we were promised at the beginning of the Jubilee, administration. 8 years ago, by the way, 8 years ago. These are conversations that happened 8 years ago. To reduce them to a wheelbarrow is really, it's disrespectful to our youth, who we have to leave this country for. And for my parting shot, and what I would wish to see...
Honorable Senator Kasanga, I'll get back to you in the final round of remarks, because I want us now to take a look at some of the feedback that has been coming through. Then we'll get some 30 seconds of looking at the text messages or the tweets. Maybe quickly you can begin by Jacob Abere, who says that here and there politics of messages is ending soon. I watch Wanasiasa like Wahome and Shelei on Raila this, Raila that. They forgot that tyranny of numbers soon are going to disappear and expose. Whoa, wheelbarrow politics is going, I don't know that you meant anywhere or nowhere. Dinga Jacob, Wanjiru should not be complaining. Why? She's the same person that kept on complaining and lamenting when some leaders were pushing for reforms of this country during the 2017 election. Now, what are we, not that we're enjoying the peace, she's busy blaming BBI. Engineer Lazaro, Jubilee loans appetite is only showing the regime inexperience on how to handle devolution. A lot of public funds ending up in private accounts overseas. We devolved extreme richness to few corrupt individuals. Kiprona Abraham, the problem with oversight role of the parliament is that most of the members are subsumed into the executive, thus forced by wrong philosophy to defend executive to the last drop of their blood. Bobo Tieno, we should be focusing on real issues affecting poor citizens which resonate perfectly with their hustlers. For instance, COVID-19, high cost of living, heavy debts, and insecurity at Capedo. And finally, Gio Tieno, one day our nation, Kenya, shall be auctioned if the level of borrowing is not checked. I pity for the generations to come. Your final remarks, Wanjiru, because again, 18 months to the next election, but the politicians and the politics will be here with us. What must we do in the intervening period? Wanjiru, if you can hear me. I cannot hear Wanjiru. Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead. Okay, nobody's looking after our interest, you say. Senator Kasanga, your final remarks. Yes, I can hear. Okay. All right. All right, Senator. And Gladys Boss and Alice Wahome, we have very little time remaining, but do you think the clamor for new voices, new leadership is too ambitious, or it's a reality within the next 18 months, despite the campaigns already going on? Starting with you, Wahome.
Anybody who wants to be part of the next government should be already in the platform, offering new ideas like they are suggesting. And I think Kenyans need to be open to ideas that will come. But I want to say that if you are not on the stage, I think you are getting a bit late. And you may not necessarily do actual politics, but you can contribute to other people, and including shaping the ideas of the leaders that are there. And I think we are not short of leaders in this country. We are not short of good policy documents. It's the implementation that becomes a problem. And therefore, I would want myself, as part of my closing, unless you have another question, as part of my closing remarks, I would want to encourage His Excellency the President, because we are now facing a declining economy. We are facing the COVID-19 pandemic. To encourage him to go back on universal health care, the coverage that he had talked about, I think there is still time to lay out some structure, working, of course, with the county governments, so that we can come up even with minimum standards that we expect at the county level, because the national government cannot delink itself completely. It needs to give standards and quality assurance in terms of the service delivery that we expect. I agree, health is devolved, but you see also at the national level, we have the referral hospitals that are also aiding. We need to inject money there. Some of this money that we are going to waste on the referendum, we have a very good constitution. Sylvia is talking about deepening and strengthening democracy, and ensuring that our institutions of governance are stronger and able to withhold the political dynamics like America did. And I agree, America survived because people who were holding institutions of governance refused to refused to go by the wills of one person, but withhold the constitutional thresholds.
All right.
But finally,
Honorable Home, allow me now to take it to Gladys Boss, because
I wanted to say on the fears, the country must stop pretense. We cannot live in isolation or somewhere I don't know, in utopia. We are in this country, and we know the economy at the grassroots level is basic. and let us address the basic economic levels where we need to spur growth.
Okay. All right, Gladys Boss.
Yes, I think I want to put an end to these attacks on the hustler movement or the wheelbarrow, what they're calling the wheelbarrow movement. The wheelbarrow movement is not literally the wheelbarrow. It is a decision. It symbolizes the decision to focus on the 16 million Kenyans in the informal sector. And someone like Wanjiru knows this very well because she does a lot of work relating to that in terms of refocusing our budget. And that is what it means. So it is not a literal wheelbarrow. It is that what you're talking about.
Okay.
I think, and I think going forward, we must refocus our thoughts because we have a very strong civil society in Kenya. I think the civil society must begin to have conversations also and persuade Kenyans that we must begin to elect leaders who are going to think about the economy. Because right now the biggest crisis we have is the economy.
All right.
And that is a conversation we must be having. And I think anyone who talks, if you talk and say you owe me a debt, that is not a policy that's going to help Kenyans. It's not about the debt. It's about helping the country move forward.
Thank you so much, Gladys Boss from Uasin Gishu, Alice Wahome from Kandara constituency, Wanjiru Gikonyo from the Institute of Social Accountability, and Senator Sylvia Kasanga, who is the nominated senator. Thank you for making time for us to have this conversation on what really should matter as Kenyans prepare for the election, which is in about 18 months' time.
17.
17 now. Oh, all right, January is almost over. But now the next topic is No Money, No Love. Mukami Wambora will be hosting a panel of how many men? Well, 4 men and 1 woman. They'll be talking about exactly that. I don't know what your thoughts are. You can text in your views via 22422 or tweet via Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag to use is Debrief.